The moment the truth cracked through the palace walls, the silence inside Buckingham Palace felt almost violent. For decades, the monarchy had survived wars, scandals, betrayals, and whispered secrets, but nothing prepared the royal family for the moment when Catherine, Princess of Wales, finally stopped pretending everything was perfect. And when the truth came out, even the famously unshakable Princess Anne reportedly lost her composure. Because this wasn't just another royal rumor. This was about a child. And the child at the center of the storm was none other than Prince Louis of Wales. Behind the gold-lined halls of Buckingham Palace, where the royal image is polished to perfection, something had been quietly unraveling for months. Palace staff sensed it long before the public had the slightest clue. Conversations stopped when certain names were mentioned. Advisors exchanged worried glances. Meetings stretched late into the night. Then came the moment no one expected. Catherine spoke, and the sentence she uttered shattered the carefully constructed illusion the monarchy had guarded for generations. "I'm going to stop lying for him." Those 8 words echoed across the palace corridors like thunder. Officials froze. One long-serving aide reportedly collapsed into a chair, stunned by what he had just heard. Another gripped a stack of documents so tightly the edges bent in his hands. The room felt colder, because everyone present understood exactly what Catherine meant. Standing nearby was Prince William, Prince of Wales, normally calm, disciplined, and almost impossible to read. But in that moment, witnesses claim his composure slipped. His eyes avoided Catherine. He looked toward the floor, then toward the window, as if searching for an escape from a reality he couldn't confront. The future king had no words, and his silence only made the situation more explosive. For months, tension had been building behind palace doors. Meetings between senior royals had turned heated. Advisors whispered about disagreements that were becoming impossible to contain. But the public knew nothing, because the monarchy survives on one rule above all others: never show weakness. But Catherine had reached her breaking point, and the breaking point had a name. Prince Louis. To the world, the youngest child of William and Catherine had always been seen as the cheeky royal, playful at balcony appearances, mischievous during national celebrations, the little prince who often stole the spotlight with his animated expressions. But behind the smiles and carefully staged photographs, Catherine had begun to notice things that didn't sit right with her. At first, the changes were subtle. Moments where Louis seemed distant, strange silences, behavior that didn't match the energetic child she knew so well. Every parent recognizes the instinct, the quiet alarm that goes off deep inside when something about their child feels wrong. Catherine felt it immediately. But in a royal household, even a mother's concern has to pass through layers of protocol. When Catherine first raised the issue privately, she expected reassurance and transparency. Instead, she was met with polite dismissals. Palace officials insisted everything was under control. They told her specialists were already involved. They told her to trust the system. But the system inside the monarchy operates very differently from the outside world. Instead of open discussions, the situation was quietly moved behind closed doors. Foreign experts were brought in discreetly. Medical consultations were arranged under strict confidentiality. No public statements, no records released, no questions answered. Catherine was given summaries, never full reports. And that was when the unease began turning into suspicion, because every time she asked for more information about her son's evaluations, the answers became increasingly vague. Meanwhile, Louis himself began showing changes that frightened her. He became quieter, more cautious, sometimes even withdrawn. And the more Catherine pushed for clarity, the more resistance she encountered. Inside palace circles, the issue was quietly becoming a dividing line among senior royals. King Charles III reportedly believed the matter should remain entirely internal, handled with discretion to protect both the child and the institution. Meanwhile, Queen Camilla was said to support a strategy of tight control over information, arguing that any hint of instability could create dangerous speculation about the royal family's future. But Catherine wasn't thinking about optics. She was thinking about her son, and that difference in priorities started tearing the palace apart. William found himself trapped between 2 impossible roles. As a father, he understood Catherine's fear. As the future king, he was expected to maintain loyalty to the monarchy's traditions. So instead of choosing a side, insiders say William did something that frustrated Catherine even more. He withdrew. Meetings became tense. Arguments erupted behind closed doors. Catherine began documenting everything privately, writing letters to trusted advisors and members of the Royal Medical Board, demanding full transparency about the specialists working with Louis. Those letters, according to insiders, were quietly sealed inside royal archives under a classified project label rather than her name. A code name, Project Windsor South. To Catherine, the label felt chilling, because it transformed her son's situation into something clinical and impersonal, another problem to be managed rather than a child to be protected. But the situation took an even darker turn when one particular figure entered the picture, a man known only inside palace documents as Mr. E. His name never appeared on official staff lists. He attended no public events. There were no photographs of him standing beside the royal family. Yet for more than a year, he reportedly had private access to Prince Louis under the explanation that he was a behavioral specialist brought in to assist with developmental concerns. His credentials looked impressive on paper. International training, specialization in cognitive resilience, experience working with elite institutions. But when Catherine began investigating his background more closely, what she discovered sent chills through her. Mr. E had connections to controversial programs overseas, facilities criticized for aggressive behavioral conditioning techniques. Some of the clinics linked to his work had faced accusations of suppressing parental concerns in favor of experimental psychological methods. When Catherine learned this, her reaction was immediate and explosive. She demanded he be removed immediately, but the palace response stunned her. Instead of acting on her request, senior figures defended the decision to bring him in. Camilla reportedly argued that several European royal households had consulted similar experts and insisted emotional reactions should not interfere with professional recommendations. Charles supported maintaining stability. William stayed silent, and that silence cut deeper than anything else. Because Catherine had already begun noticing disturbing changes in Louis after Mr. E's involvement. The once lively child had become unusually compliant, sometimes anxious, occasionally even fearful. One comment Louis made to her late one evening reportedly haunted Catherine for weeks afterward. He called Mr. E the man who fixes mistakes. The words sounded innocent at first, but the tone behind them sent a cold wave of dread through her, because no child should think of themselves as a mistake. And the more Catherine observed Louis, the more she feared something inside the palace system had gone terribly wrong. By the time the confrontation inside Buckingham Palace finally happened, Catherine had reached the end of her patience. Years of quiet obedience had collapsed. The royal code of silence, one that had protected the monarchy for centuries, was broken in a single sentence. And when she said she would no longer lie, everyone in that room understood the consequences, including Princess Anne. Known for her iron discipline and loyalty to royal duty, Anne rarely shows emotion in public or private, but witnesses say that during the heated discussion about Louis, even she struggled to keep her composure. Because this was no longer just a royal dispute, it was a family crisis. And as Catherine stood firm, refusing to back down, one terrifying question began spreading through palace corridors like wildfire. What exactly had the monarchy been hiding about Prince Louis? The silence that followed Catherine's shocking declaration did not fade. It thickened, spreading through the royal residence like a storm cloud that refused to move. Everyone inside the palace understood that a line had been crossed, and there was no way to quietly step back over it. Once Catherine, Princess of Wales, spoke those words, the fragile shield protecting the royal family's secrets began to crack. But what happened next was even more explosive, because Catherine didn't stop there. For years, she had been the picture of loyalty, smiling beside her husband, attending royal ceremonies, projecting calm elegance for the cameras. The world saw the perfect future queen standing beside Prince William, Prince of Wales. But behind that polished image, she had been fighting a quiet battle that few people inside the palace truly understood. And now, in that tense room, the dam had burst. Witnesses say Catherine began laying out everything she had discovered about the mysterious figure known inside palace documents as Mr. E. Her voice remained controlled, but the accusations were devastating. She described the research she had conducted into his past, the troubling clinics, the controversial behavioral programs, the criticism from international medical boards. Then she asked the question that froze the room again. Who exactly approved this man's access to Prince Louis? The question seemed simple, but no one answered immediately. Eyes shifted across the table. Some advisors looked toward King Charles III, others glanced at Queen Camilla, and in the middle of it all stood William, silent once again. That silence told Catherine everything she needed to know. The decision had not been made by a single person. It had been approved by the royal machine itself, a system designed to protect the crown above all else, even when the cost might be something far more personal. For Catherine, that realization felt like betrayal, because this wasn't just about royal protocol, it was about her child. And when the conversation shifted to how Prince Louis had changed over the past year, the emotional walls inside the room finally began to crumble. Catherine described the small moments that had terrified her, the nights when Louis seemed unusually quiet, the hesitation in his voice when he spoke about his sessions, the way his behavior shifted after certain appointments. Then she revealed something that made even the most hardened palace officials uncomfortable. Louis had started apologizing constantly, not for typical childish mischief, but for things that didn't make sense. He apologized for thinking wrong things, he apologized for asking too many questions, and once, according to Catherine, he whispered something that made her heart stop. He said he didn't want to be a problem anymore. Those words echoed through the room like a knife slicing through silk, because every person present understood the weight behind them. At that moment, even the famously composed Princess Anne reportedly struggled to maintain her usual steel control. Known throughout royal circles as one of the most disciplined and emotionally guarded members of the family,